Hi everybody, thanks for coming to this webinar. I'm Guillaume Boisvert, and today we'll be talking about how to make Azure work for your SMB clients. Very popular subject if there is one. I'm a product director or director of product management at SherWeb for Azure, infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. Here with me today I have Peter, who's responsible for marketing, who's going to be helping me with this presentation. Hi Peter.
Hi Guillaume.
So, here's a little bit of an agenda of what we'll be covering today. There's a fair amount of content for the half hour that we have allocated. I'm hoping to keep some time for Q&A at the end. If we run out of time, don't worry. Please do send us questions, and if we can't answer them during the time of the webinar, we'll simply contact you directly by other means, email, anything like that. So today, little other housekeeping item. This webinar is being recorded, so if you have to leave during the presentation, I hope you don't, but you'll still receive a email in the next 48 hours that includes a link to the recorded presentation. Content for today. What is Microsoft Azure? I think it's a good place to start. It may seem a bit of an obvious one, but Microsoft Azure has become so sort of wide that it's good to sort of define what we mean by that. We'll go into the Azure portal and show you a little bit what it looks like, what you would be using if you use Azure through SherWeb. We'll talk about the business opportunity around Azure. We'll talk about how to position Azure. We'll talk about the SherWeb advantage. Why would you want to use Azure through SherWeb? And then we'll get to your questions. So, about the questions, you can use the presentation tool. There's a box called Q&A. Please put in any question that you may have. We may answer them throughout the presentation. We may answer them at the end, or like I said, we may contact you directly and answer them in a more personal fashion. Without further ado, we're going to ask you a first. We have a couple of survey questions, and actually I'm going to go back here. We have a couple of survey questions for you. Answer them as truthfully as possible, and that will help to tailor the presentation to be relevant content. It will also help us going forward to make sure SherWeb products and services are as good as possible. So,
Great, thank you very much, Guillaume. Thank you to everyone for coming out today. We have a total of 4 survey questions that we will be asking. We'd like to move through them as efficiently as possible, so I really appreciate if everyone does participate, and let's get right to it. So first of all, the first 2 questions we're going to ask today or right now is just necessarily we want to find out who's here in the webinar today. So without further ado, our first question is, what name would best describe what you do?
So the idea there is your main business, or let's say the business related to the reason that you're in the webinar for Azure. Are you a managed service provider? So local IT, support, networking, things like that for local companies, local or national or whatever, but you know what I mean. Are you more of a system integrator? Are you more of an ISV software developer? Or are you more of an IT consultant? The difference there would be that usually IT consultant will work for a mandate, will find a solution to a specific problem, but they don't necessarily maintain the day-to-day operation in IT for the company to which they are attached. So we'll give you a few more seconds. How's it looking?
We've got about 70% of the participants who have voted.
All right, so let's move on to the results. Do you want to share the results?
Yes.
So predominantly a managed service provider, IT consultant crowd, which I think is in line with what we were expecting.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Okay, so perfect. So we're no disrespect to the system integrators and software developers. I think you'll find what you're looking for as well. But the conversation will relate well to IT consultant and managed service providers.
And that'll lead us to our next question. I think this is a question that is particularly relevant to our target audience. Just to give us a little bit more of an idea of your experience with managing infrastructure. So that's whether it's cloud infrastructure or on-premise infrastructure. Again, just quickly, if you could select one of the answers. We're already getting some good responses here. That's give you a couple more seconds.
Yeah, this is really meant to be as simple as it sounds. If you manage infrastructure, like server specifically at all for any client, then it's a yes. If that's not a business that you're currently in, that's a no. Nothing more to it.
Just a couple more seconds here.
Okay, so 3/4 of the people that are here are managing infrastructure. I think that's interesting. For the people that aren't currently managing infrastructure, I think the presentation will have a lot of value. No, no secrets there. It is a new venture. It'll be something new, and it will be demanding to start managing infrastructure. I think for the people that are already managing infrastructure, the jump is a lot lower to start managing infrastructure as a service. But everybody will have a good idea of what that entails by the time we're done with this presentation. So thank you, Peter.
Yes, thank you.
All right, moving on. What is Microsoft Azure? So Microsoft, and that definition is straight from Microsoft. So Microsoft Azure is a growing collection of integrated cloud services, be it analytics, computing, database, mobile, networking, storage, and web services for moving faster, achieving more, and saving money. So I think it's pretty clear it's from Microsoft. I would say most of that is very, very real, very true. It is a very interesting platform. A few more points. It's a multinational cloud, so if you're looking to have an international presence, and for most people, I think for most MSP and IT consultants, it's completely out of their reach to have data centers in multiple countries. Or if you've been working with SherWeb infrastructure products and you would like to have a European data center, certainly Azure is something that needs to be considered. Another major consideration is its full integration to the .NET and Microsoft ecosystem. So if your clients are developers of application, especially if they're .NET developers of application, the integration is now, like these days, it's exceptional. Azure started as just that, platform as a service for .NET developers, and it shows that it was really its specialty, its focus. I think for anybody that has used a modern version of Visual Studio, you can easily see the integration into Azure. And it does also allow for compliance solutions under many certifications. So Microsoft, being the size of company that it is, and their intention to service certain verticals and types of company, they went out and got a lot of certifications and made sure their platform is compliant for a lot of very specific business. And that has a lot of value and can make the selection of Azure a good one. Like I said, don't hesitate if you have questions. So I put this in. It's a little bit of a laugh, but it's also very telling. So currently, and we may be short one or two of the latest tools, but these are the 58 major features of Azure. So at the top, very sort of self-evident and popular items like virtual machine and app services and SQL databases. But it gets to data lake analytics, cognitive services, vague stuff like automation. The nice thing is the vast majority of these are available through SherWeb in our Azure offering. So you can go a lot wider if you have development to do and things like that. It will be available through SherWeb. So showing that list is one thing, but I'm going to take a minute and show you what the Azure portal looks like. So let me just flip the... Do we have a question?
We do have a question, Gil. I wanted to ask our listeners if they had any previous experience with Microsoft Azure, help you maybe focus your demo a little bit. So if you could just let us know whether you've used Microsoft Azure or not in the past, or if you're currently using it, that'd be really great.
Yeah, I think the only sort of caveat to that question is, obviously, well, not obviously, I think most people that are here are aware of Azure, otherwise they wouldn't have shown up. So it's more of a question that you used it professionally. So do you have it for a client? Do you have it for a professional project? If you've just sort of logged in and looked and left, that'd be a no. If you've used it at all in a commercial sense, then that would be a yes.
Just give you a couple more seconds here. Almost everyone's given us their answer. If you haven't yet given us your answer, just please do. I'll give you a couple more seconds. Great. Let's take a look at the answers here, and that's actually a surprising amount of you have already used or have some experience with Microsoft Azure. Obviously, though the majority still have not. But I think
Yeah, and obviously we try to limit the number of questions, but this question brings an obvious follow-up one, and I think I'm going to ask it anyway, and if you could put answers in the Q&A or chat box for the presentation, that'd be great. We'll have a look at it after the presentation. But for the people that are using it actively, the 40% of people that are here, which represents a fair amount of partners, let me put it this way. What else would make it more efficient for you or make it a better experience for you using Azure? I'm assuming you're here in this presentation because your experience is not perfect. If you were in Nirvana currently, you probably would have ignored this invitation. My question is easy, and it is completely in self-interest, is what can SherWeb do to make Azure more interesting and more efficient for you? So it's more of an open-ended question. Just put it into the QA box. We'll have a look at it. For now, we'll be getting to this demonstration. So let me just go in here. This is my own account of Azure. Some people that are used to Azure may be wondering what this portal is. I think less and less. I think more people are used to it. This is the new version of Azure. Basically, one they call Azure Resource Manager, and the other one they call Classic Azure. So this is the new Azure. Leave it to Microsoft to not do super great job on branding, so there's not a super specific name to this one. But moving forward, everybody will be using this interface. And one thing of note is if you're using Azure through SherWeb, it's 100% this interface. So the first thing that you see is the dashboard. This is a dashboard. It is automated. Azure itself will try to show you things that are relevant and that are useful. For example, here you can see the service health for the different data centers, and it's all green, which is good. We'll talk about the different region in a second. But obviously the nice thing is with a dashboard like that is you can edit it yourself. So you just go to edit dashboard. You can pick different resources that you want to pin to this dashboard. I'm not going to show you everything in the portal, obviously, because there is just so much. I just wanted to give a sense to people. I'll go in a couple of things, and I'll focus on virtual machines because it's kind of the most common one for managed service provider IT consultants, and I want to give a sense of it. But there's a number of things here, including what I would call sort of silly stuff where I can change the color scheme on the portal. But I don't think that's the reason you'll be picking Azure, hopefully. So let's just go into the creation of a virtual machine. I want to give people a sense of what's there as far as flexibility, but also what's there as far as complexity. So using Azure is not the easiest thing. For people that are familiar with infrastructure, or I would say infrastructure as a service specifically, it's not too bad. For the people that haven't touched it at all, and we saw a number of people don't manage infrastructure, and a number of people haven't tried Azure yet. For those people, they may find the experience a bit much. There is a ton of training that is available. You could talk to your SherWeb rep, say you're interested in Azure, but you would need help. We'll provide you with guidance on that subject. So if I go new and I say, actually, I'm not going to go through here. So there's a few options. I'm just going to go through here. I'm going to say virtual machines. And then this will show I have one that's already running. I'll get back to that in a second. But if I click add, you'll see the creation wizard. So the one thing, and one of the very nice thing about Azure is there's a huge selection of ready-made templates for different things. So I'll give you an example, container services. So container are all the rage with developers these days. It's available there. If you wanted to have a server with SQL already installed on it, Dynamics AX, Wowza, Drupal, Veeam Cloud Connect. There's a million things here. And I think literally there's hundreds and hundreds, and if not thousands. So that's nice. Most people would just pick Windows Server. So I'm going to pick Windows Server. From here, there's a number of versions of Windows Server. Let's say Windows 2012 R2 is the most common one. So then you get little illegal information and stuff like that. I can click create, and then I get to the actual configuration of this virtual machine. I got to give it a name. I got to pick a storage type, so I'll leave SSD for now. Obviously, if you want to lower your costs, you can use the sort of second tier storage. It is of note that the second tier storage is more of a third tier storage in Azure. The performance is just not there. They're pushing more and more their SSD storage. The performance there is good, and the price is not that bad. Give it a username, so I'll give it my name. Give it a password. Sorry, the requirements are pretty stringent, so it has to be very long. So then you get into the more Azure specific stuff, and that's where it could get confusing, and you may like to get some training, some accompaniment. Is you have to find a resource group. When you do a resource group, it's the group resources together, which may sound obvious. The idea there is simple, is that when you're creating a virtual machine, you'll have to associate it with some storage, with some networking, and all those elements will sort of go into the same group. So those are the basic element, and then you would pick the actual size of the virtual machine. So they're showing 3 here. Those 3 are the most common, say. You see pricing here. When you're working as a partner, you wouldn't see the pricing here. You would see it from SherWeb, and it would be lower than that because you get a partner discount. The other thing of note is that I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So let's just pick configuration. What they're pushing these days are their more high performance, slightly higher cost size. So DS1 V2 is the second version of the SSD type servers. But you can see if you do view all and you scroll down, there's a number of others. I think because of the data center I picked, that selection's a little bit more limited. You won't necessarily see every instance in every data center. So let's just pick that first one here. I go select. There's a number of additional settings that you have to sort of associate with a VM. Normally, when I create a VM, I would have created a storage account first. I would have created a network first, a subnet, the public IP address if I need it, and you can do security groups. Security groups are neat. There's a number of settings that you can do in regards to what traffic you let through to your VM or don't let through. That flexibility, and I mentioned it, there's flexibility and there's complexity with Azure. You get a lot of flexibility. That flexibility comes at a cost of complexity. So as a partner, all those things are available to you, and your job will be to render that in a simple, like digestible way to your clients to make it as easy of a purchase for them as possible. You can pick extension that you want to install on that virtual machine. You can do an availability set, and I'll get back to availability set in a minute, but basically the idea with an availability set is to put multiple machines that have the same role in a set. I'll talk about that in a minute. You can have some monitoring turned on, and you can have a storage account for the diagnostics. Sorry about all that. Once all that is selected, you get a summary. And if you do OK, then the machine will be created. In this case, I won't create that machine because I don't especially need it. I'll just go back to a machine I created before. So this is an existing machine, and it's giving me a sense of the little bit of information about what it's doing. And we can see that I used the CPU, like I maxed out the CPU earlier today on that machine, and then it's been quiet since I've been doing a webinar. I can get my public IP address from here. I can get the information on which subscription it's associated to, which operating system is there, which configuration it is, and this is a micro instance. It's very, very small. It's a part of a CPU, part of some gigs of RAM. That's another thing that's nice in Azure if you're doing development, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. They offer some instances that are horrible performance, but when you're doing dev, that's usually not a concern. They're also very, very low cost. All right, so for the people that know Azure, they'll know that this demonstration was maybe 2% of what Azure can do, but I just wanted to give a sense of what the interface looks like and the type of flexibility that you can get from Azure. Heading back to my presentation, from the survey question, I think most of you people are aware of the opportunity, but just a couple of stats. The expense on public cloud will grow 20% every year for the next few years, up to $141 billion with a B in 2019. That's a 100% increase basically from 2015 to 2019. In 2016, the spending on public cloud infrastructure as a service hardware and software is forecast to reach 38 billions and growing to 173 by 2016. So that's specifically on infrastructure as a service. Public infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, so basically what Azure offer, it had the biggest growth at 51%. So that's still, even with all the rest of like software as a service being very popular and everything. So I'll take 2 seconds to talk about that. Sorry for the disjointed sentence there, but most IT is still on legacy hardware. I think it's a fair statement. That's why it's a huge opportunity, but that's also what you have to consider when you're trying to sell these new cloud services to your client, is that their software is not ready to go platform as a service. Most of them, if you have developers in your pool of client, that's great, but most people don't. From there, what you have to understand is public infrastructure offers the easiest first step for people from taking their on-premise infrastructure and bringing it into the cloud. And I think for now, most people should focus on that. So, how to identify opportunity within your client for Azure. So there's a number of them. There's more than what's here, but I think those are the most relevant to the crowd that we have today. On-premise server replacement is the obvious one. Their server is due to be replaced. And you have and they have heard of the cloud. Everybody now will consider the cloud when they're making a decision. The decision's not always going to be the cloud. Sometimes it's the best solution, sometimes it's not, but it will be considered. And I've mentioned this before. If you can't answer a question about the cloud and infrastructure as a service for your client, they'll get someone else to answer those questions. And then it becomes you're the legacy service provider and there's a new provider for new things. And you don't want that situation. That's very bad. So you want to make sure that you can present both options, answer the question, allow them to make an informed decision, steer that decision, and remain relevant for your client. Capacity extension is the other one. If somebody already has hardware, they're great, everything is managed great by you, they may need capacity extension. Let's say there's a Christmas promotion or anything like that. They may be looking to get some capacity, but just for a short period of time. Then something like Azure and infrastructure as a service works great there. Terminal service remote desktop is one that's very common. People want to use their software in the cloud, and that's a good way to do it. Line of business software such as QuickBooks, we see that all the time. Hosting web services, especially I was talking about .NET application, hosting databases, backup and recovery. So disaster recovery is another great conversation you can have. By the way, I can't cover everything in this presentation, but if you want more information about disaster recovery, please talk to your rep. We have a lot of services and information about that. Agile development and testing is sort of the classic case for cloud. Again, .NET, especially in the case of Azure. So, I think we have a question here, right?
Yeah, one last question, and this is just also to shed a little light on the fact that Azure is now new and part of the SherWeb family, but we also have our own existing infrastructure as a service offering, Performance Cloud. So with these two products together, we really are allowing our partners to offer their clients the full range of infrastructure as a service. And I just wanted to know, and I was curious to see how many of our listeners today are actually already using our own infrastructure as a service offering, Performance Cloud. So I'll just give you guys a couple seconds to answer that question here.
Yeah, and our assumption is very few of you would be our Performance Cloud infrastructure as a service user or resellers, and that's fine. I think Peter put it very, very well, and our place is to help you pick services, cloud services especially, give you the best experience possible. So next, after we get through this question, I'll talk about sort of the specificities of Azure and our own Performance Cloud. I'll just take a few minutes on that. Huh.
Great. Well, welcome to all of those who are already using our Performance Cloud. To those who aren't already using it, we look forward to helping you satisfy all of your infrastructure as a service needs, whether it's Performance Cloud or Azure. don't hesitate to contact one of our partner representatives, and we'll get you set up as you need.
All right. Thank you, Peter. So I made this chart. Pardon the look of it. I'm not super great with PowerPoint. I try to be better with infrastructure than with PowerPoint. But I wanted to highlight some of the differences between the two products. So on the left, you can see what Azure through SherWeb looks like. And on the right, you can see what Performance Cloud, which is our own infrastructure as a service, looks like. And the first few things, you can see that both do them. And those are the basic building blocks. So VMs, virtual networks, VPN, database as a service. Those things are well serviced by both Azure and Performance Cloud, and then it becomes a question of more the rest of the columns to make a decision. We'll go into specific use cases, but I want to run through some of the features. So I showed you the marketplace on Azure where there's thousands of different images. So that's exclusive to Azure compared to Performance Cloud. The platform as a service, as far as .NET integration and all that, that's really a characteristic of Azure, and I'll talk about some use cases for that. If you need a HIPAA compliant solution, if you want to build a HIPAA compliant solution, that's offered by Azure, not by Performance Cloud. If you want to build PCI compliant, HIPAA is about healthcare, by the way, safety of information for healthcare, privacy. PCI is about credit card, keeping the credit card information, transaction information safe. It's offered by Azure, but it's also offered by our US instance of our Performance Cloud. Private cloud option, so the ability to use physical hardware or dedicated hardware, not currently offered by Azure, but offered by SherWeb and its Performance Cloud. I talked about availability set just before when we're talking about redundancy. So SherWeb, to cover that quickly, has it built in. So everything is N+2. You don't need to do anything. If we have physical failure, your machines are basically being moved to a healthy host in the same data center. When we're talking about Azure, if you want to have redundancy, you have to build it through what I showed about availability set. So basically, you create an availability set, you create two virtual machines, which obviously you need to pay for both, and you put them in the same availability set. The redundancy there is very good, it's very robust, but at the same time, it gets pretty expensive, and it can also complexify management. If you have an application that's not meant to run two instances of, like I'll give you an example. If you're running a website, it's fairly easy to have two machines that serve the website. But if you're running an ERP, like a classic ERP, it can get a lot more complicated to have two machines that have the same role because the application is simply not built like that. SLA, I think there was a rounding error there. Performance Cloud is not actually 100%, it's 5.9, so it's 99.999%. And that's any machine. Your client needs a single machine, the smallest machine, it's on 5.9. If you're doing Azure, the SLA is 99.95, which is very good. I mean, the difference is not negligible, but it's not big. But to get that SLA and to get that commitment from Microsoft, you have to create an availability set. So the quiz question for the crowd here today is, do you know what the SLA is if you don't have an availability set on a virtual machines? And basically the answer is there is none. Number of regions, big selling point for Azure. They have now 30 regions and they're adding more all the time. And when we're talking about Performance Cloud, we're currently at 2. Canada and US, which I think are the two obvious choice for our clients. But if you're looking to have, like if you have a client that has international presence, if they need their website to be especially fast in China or something like that, then Azure becomes a very, very interesting solution. When it comes to support, there is a minimum fee of support of Azure when you're going through SherWeb, it's $100. That fee is waived when you're doing Performance Cloud. That's included in the price. The reason is simple, is we built our solution to make sure that we could offer support. When we're working with Microsoft on Azure, that's where SherWeb can make some money, is through the support. You saw the complexity of Azure. You saw what the flexibility and number of options. I think that support is well needed. Another thing is, if you want to get support, let's say you want to get Azure directly from Microsoft and you want to get support, that commercial support starts at more than $250 a month. Partner margins, so everybody here is a SherWeb partner. Our Performance Cloud is covered by our performance tiers, so depending on the revenue that you bring, not just of infrastructure, but any revenue that you bring, so including your hosted Exchange and your Office 365, you can get from 5 to 20% discount on all of our prices. When you're selling, and by the way, that's good for everybody that's not currently selling infrastructure through us, getting a couple of deal of performance cloud infrastructure is a great way to get that percentage up, to get that performance tier discount up. Great way to do it. When we're talking Azure, we're talking about a fixed 5% on Azure list price. So whatever you've seen listed on Microsoft website, you would get 5%. It would be 5% cheaper to go with SherWeb. So this is a bit of an eye chart. I'll go through it quickly because I think we've covered most points, but that's part of our documentation. If you want some help, that's in a number of our documents. And basically it relates to the most common situation, and we're sort of making our own recommendation whether you should put it in Azure or you should put it with us at the Performance Cloud. Sorry. So SMB clients, traditional workloads, production environments, the reliability, the performance of Performance Cloud sort of steer in that direction. When we're talking about dev test environment, when we're talking about platform as a service, when we're talking about international presence, well, really Azure is your number one choice. When it comes to managed services, or if you're new to the cloud and infrastructure as a service specifically, we always recommend Performance Cloud because it's just simpler. I'm not going to go through a demo of our own portal, but it is simpler than Azure. We have videos and documentation and everything, and we can even get you a demo account if you want as a partner. Just talk to your rep. I'm moving a bit quickly because we're running out of time. There's so much stuff I'd like to say about Azure. If you want to learn more about SherWeb Performance Cloud, either go to our toolbox as a partner or just simply go to the website. So, why would you go through SherWeb to get your Azure fix? Basically, one portal, so you can do your provisioning, you can see your billing, you can see detailed usage report right from Cumulus, and I think that's a big plus. It will also segregate all of your different organizations. So if you have 10 clients that all have infrastructure, you will get one specific account for each. It will be under the organization within Cumulus. You will see the usage for each. It will be very easy to charge them for the amount of infrastructure that they're using. One thing I already mentioned, usage report, but we also give you forecasting. That's something that Microsoft itself doesn't do very well. So we'll look at your current usage for the month. You'll look at what you have currently provisioned, and we'll give you an amount that we forecast that you'll be paying for the month for Azure. We do the same for Performance Cloud, by the way. It's something that our partners greatly appreciate. And then the biggest thing is the 24/7, 365 customer support. We have certified expert in Azure. We're cloud provider gold or whatever it's called, the certification with Microsoft, the competency they call them. So you can get through the platform support for Azure. You can get billing support. It's all part of what we offer. Chat, phone, email, and then one of the biggest selling point I think is we have huge support contract with Microsoft. We have privileged relationship. We know people. So as in a previous life, I've requested support from Azure directly without a big support contract, and they'll try to help, but obviously, when you're a single user, more of a developer, your importance within Microsoft is what it is. At SherWeb, we're there for SMBs, we're there for partner, the MSP, the IT consultants. We'll take that problem and we'll escalate it to Microsoft without any additional fee. Like within the support that I mentioned before that you'll be paying for, there is no fee per ticket or per escalation. We'll use our premier support with Microsoft to get your problem fixed. And that, if you've ever paid or even priced premier support for Microsoft, I think that's worth every penny. It's a huge reason to go through to SherWeb. So from there, let's say I've convinced you, you're interested, you wanted to take some action and move forward. Well, I think the first thing you should do is you should talk to your account representative here at SherWeb about infrastructure in general or Azure specifically. You should consult the documentation that we have in the partner toolbox. And then you should start selling infrastructure-related services to your client, which seems obvious, but that's the best step, the best part of the bunch. So by talking to your partner representative, you'll get the tools, quoting tools that will help you with pre-sales. You can use our solution architects to build solution for you, for your client. I didn't plan to go through all the selling points of SherWeb, but they all apply to that Azure relationship. So I've ran over time a little bit. Do we have any specific question that we'd like to answer today? So one question was, why should I choose Azure over the SherWeb Performance Cloud? I think we've covered that sort of at length. There's a different situation. I love both product. I think Azure is just about the world's biggest set of Lego blocks And if you want to play with Lego, if you have the competency to build a house with Legos, then great. It will give you a lot of flexibility. If you're looking for something that's just solid, then our solution is maybe pre-built house and they're made of brick instead of Lego bricks. That might be a better solution for you. There's one question about Azure AD to manage credentials. That's something that is a very common use case. Azure AD relates directly to Office 365. It is the sort of default where you manage your user. So you can make the link between your Office 365 account and Azure account. That's definitely a possibility. That's something that you can talk to our solution architects. And basically, just before we finish, I asked before, what is the biggest way that SherWeb can help you with Azure? And here, everything, I think everybody answered. Yeah, the simplicity of it. It has like more help, more support, and then lower cost. So that's what we're here for. We're here to make the Azure consumption easier. We want to make it as friendly of a product for you and your client. We want to help you make some decision. Those decisions can actually save you money. That's something that we see often is people will come to us like, hey, I've priced those VMs. How much are they with you? And we'll basically put a little bit of a break on that conversation. We can give you a price. It's easy. But we'll usually try to have a more complete, well-rounded solution about the need. What's driving the need for those VMs? And then try to offer the best solution. So that being said, I'd like to sort of thank everyone for coming. Very good turnout for this webinar. I think there's a lot of interest in Azure. It's a very good brand name. People are aware of it. I think more and more people will be steered by their clients towards infrastructure as a service in the cloud. I think if you want to show value, if you want to have good reaction from your client, it should be sort of you proactively proposing it in their next request. If you have any questions, I put my email at the beginning of the presentation. Feel free to contact me directly. Otherwise, your best point of contact is your account representative. If you have any question about who your account representative is, send it simply to partner@sherweb.com. I was happy to talk to you today.